Welcome to the Economist in Your Ear podcast. Have you ever wondered how a nation known for, well, its incredible industrial output and these really high saving rates could actually be facing a challenge of insufficient domestic demand? It's quite a paradox, isn't it? And what if one of the most powerful tools to unlock consumer spending isn't some shiny new tech innovation or a big tax cut, but something much more fundamental? It's pension system. It's this really fascinating core tension we want to explore. You've got China, this industrial powerhouse, turning out goods like nobody's business. But then it kind of struggles to find enough customers. Why? Because households, well, they feel insecure. They don't spend. And we see this playing out, right? Persistent deflation. Factory gate prices have been falling for, what, 33 months straight now?
Yeah, 33 months. And that's not just a number. It's a sign of a really deep demand problem. And that lack of demand, you're right, it can easily spiral. It can become this pretty destructive cycle. I mean, if businesses can't sell things, eventually they cut back. Maybe cut wages, maybe jobs.
Which just makes people even less likely to spend.
Yeah, exactly. It locks you into this downward trend. So yeah, breaking that cycle is absolutely critical.
So that's our mission today, really. To unpack this whole situation, we'll look at how strengthening social safety nets, especially pensions, is being seen now not just as, social policy,
right,
but as a potentially powerful economic lever for China. We'll dig into how things stand now, what solutions are on the table, and importantly, some of the nuances that maybe get missed in the headlines. Okay, let's really get into the saving habit. China's famous for thrift. It's almost a stereotype, but it's very real, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It's baked into household behavior.
We're talking households saving, what, over 30% of their disposable income collectively?
Yeah, over 30%.
Yeah.
And then you look at specific groups, like migrant workers. And you mentioned Mr. Li from Henan working as a courier in Beijing.
Right, earning about 8,000 yuan a month.
And saving almost half of it, over 48%. It's incredible. It really shows you the depth of that saving impulse, probably driven by, serious future insecurity.
And where does all that saving go? That's shifted recently, hasn't it?
It really has, and that's fascinating. Historically, a lot went into property. Property felt like the safe bet, a solid store of value.
But the market's cooled off a lot.
Yeah, dramatically. Since mid-2021, property purchases are down by half, literally halved.
Wow. So where's the money going now?
Well, it has to go somewhere. And increasingly, it's just piling up in financial assets, mostly cash. We've got HSBC figures suggesting cash and deposits make up nearly half of household financial assets in China.
Half? Compared to what in the U.S.?
Less than 14% in America. So we're talking households holding maybe $160 trillion in cash, deposits and cash together, maybe 70% of financial assets. Equities, only about 10%.
So people feel safer holding cash?
It gives peace of mind, maybe, but the financial returns are tiny, and that actually weakens consumer spending even more. It feels like a confidence crisis as much as a savings habit.
Right, so it's this cycle. Caution leads to holding cash, which starves the economy of demand. Which brings us back to this idea of pensions as a kind of structural stimulus. Not just welfare, but actually changing behavior.
Exactly, it's a fundamental shift.
There was that policy advisor, Liu Shijin, formerly with a think tank linked to the cabinet.
Yes. He suggested that if China spent, say, an extra trillion yuan on rural pensions, it could boost GDP by maybe 1.2 trillion yuan. It's about 1 percentage point of annual growth. It suggests a pretty strong multiplier effect.
So if you frame it that way.
Then pension reform isn't just, nice to have social policy. It's potentially a very effective, very targeted stimulus policy. Robin Jing at Morgan Stanley, he's quite clear on this. He calls it one of China's best structural tools, specifically to unlock household consumption.
Because the idea is if you give people a reliable safety net,
they don't feel the overwhelming need to save quite so much for every possible rainy day. They gain the confidence to spend a bit more.
Okay, so with that potential, how does the system actually look today? Our sources say it's less like 3 neat pillars and more like, quote, a less tidy assemblage of 5 programs.
Yeah, it's a good way to put it. It covers over 90% of adults, which is huge coverage, but it's fragmented.
So how different are these programs for, say, an office worker versus someone in the countryside?
Quite different. For some, mainly urban workers, government employees, it's closer to what you might think of as a traditional pension. You contribute maybe into a personal account, assets build up, your payout is linked to that somehow.
More like a direct retirement saving plan?
Kind of, yeah. But for others, especially rural residents, maybe some gig workers, it's more like a basic safety net. The payout isn't really tied to what you put in or market returns. It's often a flat rate set by the government, a basic income floor.
So the security people feel and the actual money they get varies a lot depending on which program they're in.
Hugely. Absolutely crucial difference.
And the government has been making changes, tinkering around the edges in 2025. What have those looked like?
Well, a few things stand out. First, back in July, they announced the 21st consecutive increase in the basic pension for urban retirees and government folks. About 2%.
21 years in a row.
Yeah. And they gave bigger boosts to lower income retirees.
Yeah.
Which sounds good, but the total impact, less than 0.1% of GDP.
Yeah.
So it has a bit of spending power, but it's cautious.
Okay. What else?
Then in April, they did a nationwide rollout of these tax-advantaged personal pension accounts. The idea is people save more themselves. Over 73 million accounts opened, which sounds impressive.
Yeah.
But fewer than a quarter of the people who opened accounts have actually put any money in yet. So near-term impact on demand, pretty muted.
Right.
And finally, back in March, they nudged up the rural basic pension floor by 20. Just 20 yuan. The minimum is now 143 a month in many places, though local governments often top it up.
So more symbolic than substantial.
Largely symbolic, yeah. Shows the central government is willing to help fund rural benefits, but the amounts are still very small.
Which really brings us to the big question, doesn't it? Are these incremental changes, these careful tweaks, are they really enough, given the scale of the economic challenge?
I mean, that's the core issue.
Because it feels like, while the steps are deliberate, maybe fiscally careful, the ambition seems to lag behind what might be needed.
I think that's fair. The implementation hasn't quite matched the rhetoric sometimes.
And we also saw that phased retirement age increase kick in this January. 63 for men, 58 or 55 for women.
Right. And that's important. But its main goal seems to be keeping the main pension fund solvent long-term.
Not really about boosting spending now.
Exactly. It's a solvency measure, not a demand stimulus. So these recent adjustments, they're moving parts, but maybe not the big gear shift needed.
Okay, now here's where it gets really interesting, I think. We tend to assume, okay, increased pensions, people get more money, boom, they spend it, consumption goes up. But is it actually that simple? Does every extra yuan just get spent?
The crucial question. It really comes down to who gets the extra yuan. Economists talk about the marginal propensity to consume the MPC.
Right, so for every extra dollar, or yuan, you get, how much of it do you actually go out and spend versus save?
Precisely. And the assumption that all extra pension money just floods into domestic spending. Well, and it needs a closer look. We know rural seniors, for example, tend to have a pretty high MPC. They spend most of any extra income they get, often on basic necessities.
So money given to them likely gets spent quickly.
Very likely. But urban retirees, it's often a different story. They might channel higher benefits into helping out their families, maybe grandkids' education, or they might just save it, add it to the pot.
So a blanket uniform pension increase gives you uneven results in terms of actual spending boosts.
Exactly.
Oh.
Uneven bang for your buck. This suggests more targeted approaches could be better. Things like, say, healthcare vouchers or maybe elder care service credits.
Why those specifically?
Because they directly tackle other big sources of insecurity, like worries about healthcare costs, which is a massive driver of precautionary saving. If you ease that specific worry, you might unlock more general spending.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Okay, what about the gig workers? Like Mr. Lee, the career, there's such a huge part of the modern economy now, maybe 200 million people.
Yeah.
How do they fit in?
Yeah, the platform and flexible work economy is massive. And for them, it's often less about the generosity of the pension payout and more about just having coverage in the first place. That's what builds confidence.
So can they join the system?
They can opt into the mandatory Social Security system. But here's the catch, and it's a big one. They have to pay both the employee's share and the employer's share.
Ouch. How much is that?
It works out to roughly 20% of their income. For many, that's just prohibitive. They can't afford it.
So they remain outside the safety net.
Many do, which is why redesigning contributions could be key. Maybe a sliding scale, say 5% to 20%, depending on income. Or maybe getting the platforms they work for to contribute a share, perhaps with some kind of matching credit.
So bringing more people in, even with smaller initial contributions, might be more effective than just raising benefits for those already covered.
Absolutely. It widens the base, improves fund solvency in the long run, and crucially, gives millions more workers that basic sense of security that could encourage spending. It's about accessibility.
Okay, and one more piece of the puzzle. The pension funds themselves, all that money being saved.
Right.
How is it being invested? You mentioned earlier they're playing it very safe.
Extremely safe, given the amounts involved. And the return on those assets really matters for whether the system can afford generous benefits long term.
So what's the issue?
Take occupational pensions. They cover about 76 million people, including a lot of government workers. They typically allocate only about 10–15% of their funds to equities, to the stock market.
That seems really low for long-term funds.
It is. And it's not necessarily because they lack faith in equities long term. It's often because the fund managers are judged on their performance annually.
Ah, short-term focus.
Right. So they play it safe to avoid any down years, even if it means lower returns over decades. It's long-term money managed with a short-term horizon.
Is that changing?
Well, the authorities are now encouraging them to use longer evaluation periods, like 3 years. The hope is this allows managers to take a bit more risk, allocate more to equities, potentially boosting returns over the long run.
Which could help pay for better benefits without needing huge government top-ups.
Exactly. It could also help stabilize the stock market itself, but, execution is key, especially for smaller local funds. They need clear guidelines, good risk management. It's a big cultural shift for those managing the money.
So pulling all these different threads together, it sounds like Beijing has a potential roadmap here, one that goes beyond just writing bigger pension checks.
Yeah, the sources suggest a more thoughtful, multi-step approach is being considered. 5 key elements seem to emerge.
Okay, let's walk through them.
First, front-load those rural pension increases. Add maybe $100 a month each year for 3 years. And importantly, fund it by earmarking dividends from state-owned companies, SOEs.
Why rural first?
Targets the group most likely to spend the extra cash and supports local economies, especially service industries in smaller cities.
Okay, step 1. What's next?
Second, lower the entry barriers for platform workers. That sliding scale for contributions, 5% to 20%, may be combined with those platform matching credits. Get more people contributing.
Makes sense. Third,
bundle health and long-term care insurance with pensions. Pilot this in a few provinces first. Create integrated social insurance accounts. This directly tackles the worry about future medical costs, a huge reason people save so much.
right, reduce that precautionary saving motive. Number 4.
Fourth, push harder on capital market reform for pension money. Make that longer 3-year-plus assessment period for fund managers the norm, and maybe allow some pension funds to invest in things like Starboard ETFs, that's Shanghai's tech board. Aim for higher returns.
To make the system more self-sustaining. And finally,
Fifth, and this might sound simple, but it's crucial. Communicate the benefits clearly. Give people annual statements showing what their pension income is likely to be, adjusted for inflation. Build that confidence, make the future feel less uncertain. That alone could help lower the overall savings rate over time.
so when you put it all together, the message seems pretty clear. Pension policy really is one of the most potent tools Beijing has to boost consumption.
Definitely seems to be.
Yeah.
It's a direct way to put money into the real economy and address some deep-seated insecurities. However, and it's an important however, the real impact seems to depend less on just the headline generosity, the size of the check,
Right.
and more on how wide the coverage is, how well the assets perform, and how credibly the whole system is communicated.
Yeah.
The recent 2025 measures we talked about, they show a deliberate, maybe fiscally cautious approach. Incrementally raising benefits, rolling out personal accounts, extending working lives,
Steps in the right direction, but maybe small steps.
possibly. But if they combine these with bolder moves, like really lifting rural pensions and making it much easier for gig workers to enroll, then yes, pensions could become a cornerstone of China's whole quality growth strategy.
Yeah.
And potentially without blowing the budget or creating financial instability, it's really about building that long-term confidence.
It leaves you with a really provocative thought, doesn't it? When you consider China's deep culture of thrift and that very real individual insecurity felt by people like Mr. Li, who lives in Beijing but still thinks about going back to farming if work dries up, what does it actually take for a government to build enough trust in its social safety net to fundamentally change how a whole nation saves and spends? And what does that imply for the future path of Chinese-style modernization? Something to think about. Thank you for joining us for this exploration.